Hi, you're listening to The Sociology Show, a podcast about absolutely anything to do with the wonderful world of sociology. Whether you're a teacher, a lecturer, a student, or just taking a passing interest, this podcast will look at a range of issues from social class, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, religion, crime, education, and anything else that sociology has to offer. My name is Matthew Wilkin, and each episode I will speak to someone working in the field of sociology and let them explain all about their own interests, their research, and their experiences. So, put your earphones in, turn the volume up, and let's be sociology geeks together, eh? Hello and welcome to The Sociology Show. The Sociology Show podcast is brought to you in association with Tutor2U Sociology, the exam performance specialist for A-level and GCSE sociology students and teachers. And so you can visit their website, which is at tutor2u.net/sociology. And once you're on there, you can get revision guides, you can get flashcards, you can get revision videos and everything else that you need for your A-level or GCSE sociology studies. And so my guest for this episode is Alicia Denby. Alicia, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be on your show.
Thank you. Are you in the Manchester area, is that right?
Yes, in Greater Manchester.
Great. I don't know what it's like up there. It's raining down here. I don't want to make a typical joke about Manchester being rainy, but is it raining where you are?
Oh, absolutely. It never stops, does it?
So, Alicia, I always ask people to start by telling us a little bit about who they are and what they do, if you don't mind.
No, that's absolutely fine. So I'm Alicia, and I am a sociology graduate and soon to be a PhD student in sociology. My research interests are dating, intimate relationships, sexuality, singleness, just anything around the field of intimacy. Really, I was particularly inspired by Dr. Jenny Van Houw, who I understand you interviewed recently. I was her student, and her research really inspired me. So after attending her lectures, I kind of went on a journey to research intimacy and singleness and all those things in the perspective of young adulthood, because it's quite it's a gap in research. Young adulthood isn't very much addressed, so I hope to address that in my research.
I'm always a little bit nosy as well, Alicia. Other than being inspired by Jenny, is there any other reason why intimacy, young adulthood, that sort of area, why it interests you? What sort of drew you into that kind of area?
I think mainly because a lot of the research that we were learning around, it didn't resonate with me. So when we were learning about the young people enjoying sexual freedom and the hookup culture and all those kind of like demonizing young people and their sex lives, it didn't really resonate with me, because I wanted a relationship for the emotional intimacy, and that was never addressed. So for me, it was trying to flip the narrative and show the other side of things, and think, well, these researchers, yes, it may be true, but what about the rest of us? Where are we represented? So that's kind of where I was brought into the intimate side of things, of thinking about my own lives and my friends and people around me, and how they experience things. And of course I am very nosy, so I always like to find out what's going on in people's lives.
There's quite a disconnect, isn't there, between the media representation of what we think is going on and the reality, and that, you know, there is this suggestion that we're in this wild kind of hookup culture, but actually a large percentage of people are just looking for a standard, whatever standard means, normal relationship, aren't they? Absolutely.
I think in a lot of the research, it's shown that young people just want to hook up. It's all about Tinder, and its primary motivation is sex. And of course, for a lot of people, that is true. But there are some people who are looking for more of an emotional bond. And I studied both in my undergraduate dissertation and postgraduate dissertation. I studied young people who were actively dating, so single people, but who were dating, and asked them those questions of what do you use it for, what your experience is, and they repeated the same things. They were looking for that romantic relationship. It was sometimes it was a hookup, but sometimes it was more. And I think there's a real, like you say, disconnect between what is shown about young people and what is experienced. So I like to bring that to life and show the nuances of being young and single and trying to navigate Tinder.
Yes, yeah. So let's get stuck into your research a little bit further, then, Alicia. And what's really going to stand out is your research is based on Love Island, isn't it? Which I
Yes.
know we were just mentioning that at the time of recording, we're about to go into the new series of Love Island. I'm not sure what we're on to, series 7, maybe.
Yes.
And so it's probably going to take over many people's lives over the summer period, and certainly take over Twitter as well. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about your research?
Absolutely, yeah. So I came about researching Love Island because I actually attended a symposium during my master's where the editors of the journal, Dr. Sophie Woodward and Dr. Laura Fenton, held a symposium about Love Island. They kind of put forward that they were interested in Love Island sociologically, and we just had a discussion. And within that, I got lots of ideas, and my main idea was how gender is performed and shown in Love Island. So then when it came to the journal being published, I put forward my research to be considered. So that's how it came about. But I've always been a fan of Love Island. I've always watched Love Island, and I've always found it interesting sociologically. Of course, it's fun to watch as just an active participant, but the themes that come out of it I find are quite interesting as a sociological debate. So I was interested in gender representations. Of course, there's a lot on the masculinity, there's a lot on gaslighting, toxic masculinity, the do-bit society. I mean, you could write a whole book on the representations of masculinity in Love Island, and I would quite like to do that. But I was also interested in femininity, because when femininity is discussed in relation to Love Island, a lot of the narrative is on beauty standards, the unrealistic standards of women. And there's not really much on the other side of things, which I found interesting, because women are shown quite negatively in Love Island, and it's not really addressed. And they're kind of they're victims, but they're not seen as victims. And that's something that I draw upon in my research, in the sense that women are mistreated by their male partners, and they may be being cheated on or just being deceived. But then when women have that emotional reaction to it, when they naturally argue, when they show disapproval, it's shown as excessive and out of control, and they're crazy, they're paranoid. And you find that in a lot of the instances, particularly in the case of I think it was Jordan and Anna, that he puts it all on her, like, oh well, this is what I mean, you're crazy, like, look at you. And to use that stereotype to then further excuse his behaviour and also gaslight her into thinking that's her own fault. So I think it's a real problem, and I'm hoping that in the latest series that we don't see much of that. But I can't say that I would be surprised if we do, because so far every series there's been instances where if you analyse it on a deeper level, it is quite problematic. But it's because it's for entertainment purposes. It's attracting ratings. They're having a showdown. It's explosive, and these are people's lives, and they're being made to feel like they're crazy. In these relationships, women suspect their partners of cheating or being deceitful, but the partners will then make them feel like they're going crazy and use their emotionally charged reactions to give weight to the idea that they are crazy. So the biggest example of that I found, and it was actually spoken about in the media at the time, so fortunately it was picked up on, was Adam Collard and Rosie Williams. Rosie suspected Adam of being unfaithful and seeking a connection with a New Islander, I think it was Zara McDermott, and he completely flat out denied it, despite us, the viewers, seeing scenes of him, say, pulling Zara for a chat, as they say, and basically trying to get to know her a bit more, and being really, really deceitful to Rosie, really being hurtful. When Rosie confronts him about it, he has the reaction of, well, if you weren't like this, I wouldn't have to. Like, I wouldn't have to go and seek someone else. Like, making it her fault again. It's never really for a lot of the cases in there, it's not really the man's fault that they've gone and got a new partner. They kind of put the blame on the women and use their paranoia or outbursts to justify that of, well, why wouldn't I if you're acting like this? And I think that's quite damaging for the contestants themselves and also for the audience watching, that they then may internalise that. And I mean, in my research, I don't make these assumptions because, of course, the methods used, I can't make these statements, but you can assume that for an audience to watch this, it's problematic that women feel to blame if their partner strays when it's not their fault at all. So that's something that I wanted to address in my research, and I mentioned that with reference to Rosie and Adam, and also Jordan and Anna more recently, when he dumped her after 2 days of being together, and there was that explosive row, which again was shown as something as to be entertaining, which was, there were previews of it of Storm Anna, and watch Storm Anna erupts, and it's used for entertainment, watching women kind of suffer and have that the breakdown of emotion of, you've just found out that your partner is deceiving you, but it's used for entertainment purposes, and then to make that worse, your reaction is then used to excuse their behaviour. It's a real issue. It's something that I wanted to draw attention to in my paper, because it's something that I was watching and I was thinking, well, it's not these women's fault, and you're watching them kind of be victims when they're not at all.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate on purpose, because
Okay.
I'm just trying to think what the media often say. So on one hand, we can say it's the way it's edited, it's the way that the women are being portrayed. And the argument often is, well, no, it's reflecting what actually happened. If you didn't do it, we can't show it, that kind of thing. That's often the argument, isn't it? That it's just reflecting of what actually happened. So how, from your point of view, it must be very difficult to know what you're seeing in terms of reality, because you're seeing an edited down 1 hour version of Love Island every evening.
Oh, absolutely. That's something that you have to take into consideration when analysing Love Island, both in terms of academically and just when you're watching it, that everything you see is just, it's like an authentic reality. It's meant to be reality, but it's in an environment where they don't have access to the outside world. They just have each other. They're around each other 24/7. They're edited, producers. You don't know the extent to which the storylines are true, because there has been some occasions where contestants have then left and said they've been told to say things. So I think Love Island and things within it should be taken with a pinch of salt. Definitely, I don't think you can watch the series and think it's absolutely true, but I think it does kind of give you that springboard of, you watch it and then that resonates with things that happen in real life. So although those situations may be cleverly edited or hyper exaggerated, that those things do go on in real life. And I think I didn't mention this within my paper, but this is just an observation of mine, but if you look at the Twitter threads of, during these instances relating to Adam and Rosie, or Jordan and Anna, or Michael and Amber, of people tweeting saying that they've experienced similar things where they've been made to feel like it's their fault. And I think it also sheds light on those things. It may not be completely accurate or real, but it opens that dialogue and kind of exposes the audience to these themes to then reflect on.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for The Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
One of the things you mentioned is about just how kind of heteronormative the roles are, aren't they? So they not only portray women in the kind of stereotypical, irrational way, but everything about the show is very heteronormative, isn't it? In terms of what is masculinity, what's femininity. even to the extent the guys are supposed to ask the girls out and supposed to take them out and so on. It's very stereotypical, isn't it, as a show?
So absolutely, I've been, as I've previously mentioned, I'm heavily inspired by Dr. Jenny Van Houff, and my research focuses on how heteronormative roles have adapted in relationships and the extent to which they actually have. Because research suggests, I mean, the transformation of intimacy would suggest that relationships are so diverse now that the roles are kind of mixed and there's more nuance. And I would like to believe that, but I do think to an extent that those traditional roles do exist, and Love Island is a perfect example of that. Of that, despite the freedom that we have, those roles are rooted so deep that they're always returned to. For instance, the girls do wait for the men to do these ritualistic confessions of love.
Yes.
I mean, they're asking you out on a date. I think it was was it Cady and Scott, when he put in a tea towel, he wrote out "Will you be my girlfriend" through towels, and then put her on the balcony. It was a big display of asking them out, and the girls never, as far as I'm aware, I mean, I've watched every series, but I can't recall a time where the woman has taken the lead and asked. It always seems to be the men that make these excessive displays, and just it's the men that confirm the relationship as well. It's always seems to be the men that have that power in the relationship. And also to bring me on to the other side of my paper, the sexual double standard is present within it. The heteronormative ideal of the sexual standard is men have an active role and women take a more submissive role. And I mean, that's shown in the Do-Bit Society, the men congregating every day to discuss what's gone on the night before. Meanwhile, when women discuss their sex and their sex lives, they're deemed man-eaters and threatening. And I mean, even now, if you think of, I mean, people who have watched Love Island who may be listening to this would immediately pick out the man-eaters would be Megan Barton Hanson and Maura Higgins, because they're the two sex-positive women that have been shown in Love Island, who are quite open and discuss their sexuality. But I think it's problematic in the sense that that's deemed as a bad thing, that because they discuss sex, that's bad, but men can have the Do-Bit Society and that's seen as entertaining, and you get T-shirts made out of with DBS wrote on it and things like that. It's celebrated, whereas the women are demonised for it. And I think that's the biggest example of the inequality that exists within these heteronormative roles.
I also found it really interesting. I haven't watched every series, but in terms of that heteronormativeness, in terms of stereotypically what the couples go for, there was a series, I think it was the series you mentioned with Adam, where the perceived most attractive man was the tall, dark, handsome. He was the tallest, he was the most muscular, and the most attractive female, I think it might have been Olivia, she was deemed the most attractive, and she was stereotypically blonde hair, blue-eyed, curvy, big bum, big boobs. So even in terms of who is seen as the alpha or the main person in the house, often follows that absolute kind of stereotypical narrative.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I explored in my postgraduate dissertation, because my postgraduate dissertation focused on masculinity and how young men navigate masculinity with conflicting narratives of the traditional stoic man, the kind of sexual prowess and the traditional masculinity, the ideal, versus the kind of the more sensitive man and the new forms of the division of labour and just a new version of masculinity, and how they navigate that. And it was actually brought to light in my postgraduate dissertation when participants discussed how they navigate masculinity in changing contexts where there is a conflict between traditional and more detraditionalised versions of masculinity, wherein they're informed by ideas of masculinity being the number of sexual partners you achieve and the lad culture and things like that, versus more detraditionalized versions of masculinity where there's more kind of emotional sensitivity and more openness and more liberalism. And they kind of discussed how they found it difficult, and watching things like Love Island, watching shows like Love Island and seeing masculinity, that it's the guys who adhere to the traditional values, who are sexually, they have sexual prowess, they're muscular, they adhere to this lad culture, that they're the ones who have the most success. And it's almost the participants themselves called upon the narrative that the nice guy doesn't finish last. Like, it's, they never get the girl being the nice guy. They're often told that they're too nice, or they're more like a friend than a romantic partner, and they called upon Dr. Alex George to represent that. Because in that series, he was continuously friend zoned because he was a nice guy. He didn't talk about women in a negative way. He didn't adhere to the lad culture. But in the same way, as you watch the series progress, he gets advice from the other men in the show who do have those traits. And as the series progresses, he kind of becomes more like them. And that's when there's a point in the series where he dumps, I think it's Alexandra Crane. And that was kind of a turning point in the series of he's taken on their attitudes because those guys are more successful in love. And it was quite sad to see that he didn't get the girl from being just a nice guy. He had to take on these attitudes of the lad culture and being more confident and more assertive and more sexual. And I think it does create an interesting dialogue around masculinity and perceptions of masculinity in Love Island, and the same with femininity. Like the girls who are more attractive have the most partners, and it's sad to see some of the contestants, when they're selected last or they're not very lucky in love, that informs their sense of self, which I think is really sad to see, and is a reason that I think Love Island has its problems in that it could create a lot of confidence issues for its contestants who aren't so lucky in love.
Do you think there's certain ways in which the contestants are selected then? Do you think they're very careful in terms of who they do and don't allow onto the show? Because it seems that they do follow those expectations. So do you think there's just some clever kind of filtering in terms of the selection process?
I think there definitely is. I mean, if you look at the lineup that's been released this series, we were told it would be diverse and more representative of the population, but they're all conventionally attractive. They're all regular size, athletic, and I just it was disappointing but not surprising when the lineup was released that the people who were selected are conventionally attractive people who do fit the mold, who fit the elite level of attractiveness. That I would like to see more diversity, more people that actually look like the UK population, because it's damaging. I think it's when audiences watch this show and they see these girls, and men as well, because a lot of the discussion is on women and the beauty standards of women, but men as well. The men are all athletic. They've all got six packs. They're all attractive, and I think when you look at contestants in the past who have been on Love Island, from the top of my head, I recall Jack Fincham. He didn't have a six pack, and he was deemed unattractive because of it, and that would then create issues when you're watching that, thinking, well, I look like him, and he's being told he's unattractive. So what does that make me? So I do think that's a real issue, and it's sad that we're in this 2021 and we're still 7 series later. We're still relying on these outdated ideals of the elite attractive, and it's really sad. And I just hope that, as they always do, they have newcomers throughout the series, that hopefully they're a bit more diverse, and actually represent the population.
I mean, again, I'll play devil's advocate again, because I'm just trying to think what I've heard interviews with the producers and the sort of team behind Love Island before, and they always claim, well, they've never tried to be anything else. They're not trying claiming to be an intellectual show or push the boundaries of representation. It is what it is, to use a Love Island expression. It is what it is, and it doesn't claim to be anything else. It is a show about beautiful people, and a dating show which we tap into. So do you think that's justified if they say, well, it is what it is, and it's not trying to be anything else?
Definitely. I think Love Island is famous for its aesthetic. It's sexy singles, as they say. They're attractive, they're young, they're fit. So I think it's, like I say, when the lineup was released, it was disappointing but not surprising. And I think they've established this brand based on the images, the contestants they select. So I understand why they maybe don't change the narrative, because if they did make it more inclusive, it maybe lose its sparkle. But I just think in the era that we're in, I do think there could be a bit more diversity. I think it would be, especially with the mental health campaigns that they put forward, actually recognising that the impact that they can have on the audience, that would be favourable. But again, it is their brand. I do understand that they're selling this ideal. They're selling it's this commodified love, isn't it? It's these perfect people looking for the perfect relationship in Mallorca. It's meant to be elite. So I do understand it. I just, as a viewer, I would like to see more people who look like me rather than supermodels, because it can, as a viewer, you look and you think, oh, wish I looked like her. But then you have to remember that they are chosen for this show, and they should be treated, I think, as celebrities. And I think it should be kind of understood by audiences that these are chosen for what they look like. It's not meant to be representative, and that would go a long way.
Agreed. Alicia, where are you going next with the research? What's the next step?
Well, I'm beginning a PhD in October, and that will study singleness. It's actually funded by the Levenshulme Trust, and it's on singleness and the city. So it's how single people are excluded from the urban space. Again, following the channel of heteronormativity, and how heteronormativity can be perpetuated in the design of the city, and how actual single people experience the city because of that. So that's the next steps, and I'll be studying that at Manchester Metropolitan. So that's where I'll be going next with my research.
Excellent, thank you. And where can people find out more about the bit that you wrote about Love Island? It's online, isn't it?
Yes, it's online. It's on Frontiers. It's Frontiers in Sociology, and it's the Love Island edition.
Excellent, thank you. Well, Alicia, thank you very much for talking to the show today. It's going to be very interesting as we enter Love Island time during the summer, and expect to see a lot more tweets and a lot more outrage and discussion going on Twitter and other platforms over the next month or so. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the discussions ahead. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, Alicia. I really appreciate it. No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on. Thank you. Bye now. Thank you.
The Sociology Show podcast relies on the kind contributions of sponsorship and donations. If you enjoy the show, then you can help with the hosting costs by donating as little as £5 on the GoFundMe page. Simply visit uk.gofundme.com and search for the Sociology Show. If you can donate, then you will be sent a Sociology Show pen as a small thank you for your continued support of the show.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. If you would like to contact the show or be interviewed, then please email the sociologyshowpodcast@gmail.com.